This is Connections. From class to career, join us as we explore the interconnection between life, learning, and work. We are your hosts, Mark Andrade and Michael Spencer, recording from Humber Polytechnic. Today we come to you from Gratitude Hall. Our guest is Leanne Milech, an award-winning writer, former lawyer, and now a beloved English professor and essays editor at Humber Polytechnic. She is also a huge believer in the power of kindness and gratitude.
In our conversation with Leanne, we talk about the power of active listening, the importance of empathy and kindness, and how creative writing can unlock your personal and professional authentic self.
Let's take a listen to our conversation with Leanne. Always such a positive, supportive, and kind colleague at the college. Many times in meetings, you show gratitude and demonstrate tremendous active listening skills. I can imagine that your students really appreciate this approach to your teaching style. Why do you value gratitude and kindness and model those actions in the workplace? And in what ways do you think this approach has benefited you personally and even benefited your coworkers and students?
Oh my God, I have so much to say. And thank you again for the lovely, kind words. Okay, so very fundamental to my entire being, gratitude. I grew up with my dad, who was completely obsessed with New Age spirituality and self-help. And so when we drove around like running errands at home, he would have like his Tony Robbins seminar tapes playing. And I can like still remember Tony being like, you have to have an attitude of gratitude. Like it is essential for success. So this was like really instilled in me from a super young age. And I also like raised myself with Oprah every day after school, and she was really big into like making gratitude lists. So I was sort of trained in this idea of gratitude as a way to feel abundant, to feel successful, to feel happy. And so that's just how I am in my personal life. I do keep gratitude lists. I'm always saying thank you for even like the smallest things. Like today, the water, when I was like brushing my teeth, I was like, well, I'm so grateful that this water, like we take these things for granted. And I'm not like that all the time, but I try to practice, you know? So that just naturally comes out in my teaching. And I think kindness, well, I guess I really modeled myself after certain celebrities whom I admired. So these are maybe some obscure ones, but like Celia Ward was an actress I really loved. She used to be on like Sisters back in the day, and this show that I was obsessed with called Once and Again. I became like a really big fan of her, and I went to see her. She wrote a memoir, and I went to her like book signing. And I remember how kind she was to me in particular, but to everyone. Women like that, like Meredith Vieira, a journalist who used to co-host The View, like she was just always so kind with the guests. And I wanted to be like these women. I just thought it was such a beautiful attribute. And so, yeah, I was like role modeling. And also in this world where we're so incredibly divided, there's so much vitriol on social media. There's so much hatred and a lack of empathy. And I just think if we can embody kindness and be a bridge between people, that's like what a beautiful gift to give. And in terms of like how it's helped my life personally, I mean, first of all, being hired as a lawyer on Bay Street, that is a personality situation. Like when you're competing with other people, right. We all have certain grades. We've all gone to law school. Like I was competing on paper, we all look the same. But to get an articling job, you know, out of 330 people, they were choosing one when I went to get my articling job at the firm that I wanted to be hired at. And I remember the interview is just conversations with people. They're thinking, who do I want to spend Christmas with doing a deal because we would work through Christmas. I was a corporate lawyer, and it's like all day and all night and, 12 hours. Like, it's a personality issue. It's like, I want to be with the nice person, and I remember there was like a dinner and interview situation with all of us together at the dinner, like 12 of us competing for this job and a bunch of lawyers. And they're just observing our behavior, our attitude. So yeah, kindness has, I think, taken me like quite a long way. And I think it makes like this kind of approach to my teaching, I think it makes my students, hopefully my goal is to make them feel really safe in the classroom and seen. And when you feel safe and seen, you're going to be more comfortable to take risks. And when we're nervous, when we're afraid, we can't think clearly. So we can't learn, we can't take in information and apply it. So I don't know, I just hope to create like a safe atmosphere where people are comfortable to take risks, to ask questions, and yeah.
I thought it was interesting what you were saying about kindness as kind of like an employability skill. And how even on like Bay Street and among lawyers, who we don't think of typically as like, maybe this is a stereotype, but the kindest of people, that a big part of working in a place is your ability to like get along with other people. Did you see that kind of when working in law? Because I think of law as like a very kind of cutthroat industry, right?
Yeah, I had a student actually, because I teach the paralegal and law clerks legal writing, and I had a student in my RIT 106, like, paralegal law clerk grammar class, critical thinking class, ask me, "You seem really nice. Like, did you have to change your personality to be a lawyer?" Like, literally, like just very recently. And I was like, no, in fact, it was an asset. And what I saw was, like, time and time again, it happened again, like once you're articling, there were, I guess, 13 articling students or something like that. And we were articling, it was the recession, it was 2008, 2009. And then, so normally how the Bay Street system used to work, and I'm not sure if it's the same now, is like almost every articling student would get hired back as an associate. So you get the articling job and it's your golden ticket. You're going to be hired back because they've trained you, they've invested in you. They're not going to fire you unless you like burn the law firm down. But because it was the recession, there was competition. So they were only going to take one corporate lawyer out of the bunch of us. And not everyone wanted to do corporate. But again, when they hired me, I was like, okay, there's two things. They took me out of my colleagues who were all very smart, and they were nice too. But I think I had like a little bit of an edge with my personality, with my kindness, maybe my gratitude was like just, a smidge more. And, Also my writing skills, as I know we're going to talk about that later, but I think I was not the most brilliant legal mind. I mean, I was fine, obviously, but I think my gifts were my kindness, my attitude, my smile. Like, I'm going to smile. I'm going to get it done. I'm not going to be a problem. I'm going to be low key, and I'm going to be a joy. I'm going to be a pleasure to be around. So I did see, even in law, like not just those examples from myself, but other kind lawyers who were doing well, who were, managing partners, and yeah, the people who weren't as friendly were fewer and farther between than you would imagine.
Right. That's good to hear. Yeah, no. And I'm just thinking too, to my experience teaching workplace writing, and I always try to tell my students, when we're doing like a cover letter assignment or we're talking about writing, that one of the things that you can really control is like politeness, tone, how you speak to people, that lasting sort of soft skill does sort of cut through a lot of the noise. Like, as much as you might be a brilliant nurse or a brilliant lawyer, when it comes down to it, people do resonate with these other sort of skills that, you could say maybe is a little bit of personality, but I think we can really lean into being positive, being polite in how we communicate. And so it's just nice to hear a tangible example of how that has served you well, and how it's not always just maybe, especially being in a college system, thinking it's grades, it's how smart you are, or it's how well you do in these kind of checkbox hard skills. Like, sure, you need to know those too, but there's this other part of yourself that you bring, your personal self that you bring into the workplace that really can shine through and cut through some of these other things. So thanks for sharing that. No, that's really helpful.
When I think of people who are good listeners, they're listening with more than their ears, right? Like they're actually kind of hearing you, not just hearing the words that kind of you're saying. And I feel like you're really good at that. We were wondering if you how you developed that maybe skill, or is there what's going on when you do that? Because I find often
everything.
I'm not listening.
But we are right now. We are listening right now.
I feel, yes. First of all, again, thank you so much for the kind words. And also, I do feel you're both very good listeners and you're listening very well right now. So thank you. Yeah, I would say listening. Okay, so I mentioned my dad and like this, growing up in this kind of context where we were learning together actually a lot of like new age self-help kind of concepts. And one of them is this concept of like the other person is you. So from a very young age, I had this idea of the world that I still believe personally, that we're all sort of one, we're made up of the same stuff. And yes, you're Mike and you're Mark and I'm Leanne, and that's fine. That's what we see with our human senses. And it's very real in our context, but there's also another realm going on that we can't see. And that's also scientific, right? Atoms and everything like that. So everything is energy, and we're all made up of the same energy. So when I think of this teaching of like the other person is you, like I really believe that on a cellular level. So when someone else is talking, that's me talking. That's me in another form. So of course I want to listen to myself, because we're really brothers and sisters and really the same, and non-binary, non-gender oriented relations as well. So it's like that is underneath it at the deepest part of my listening, is that belief in the world. And also like I really like wanted to be heard as a kid. I really like wanted people to like see me and hear me. I wanted to be an actress when I was little. I went to an art school and I wanted attention, honestly. Like I wanted to like sing out. I know I not wanted to. I'll be totally frank with you. I remember being 7 years old and sitting like in our bathroom, like with the door closed, on the like windowsill, and the window like went out into like the house next door was like right there, and I remember like singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow out that window, and I knew the neighbor, I knew the woman, like the mom was outside like gardening, and I like wanted her to, it's like so sweet, like I wanted her to hear me. So I think I was like I think I needed a little bit more of that at home. So I've always wanted to sort of give what I knew I needed. So even though I don't need that in the same way anymore, like I think we all want to be seen and heard, even adults who have, loving partners and whatever, everything's good. So there's that aspect too of like what I wanted when I was young. And then there's also the very practical element of like, I mentioned like really studying Oprah, and like, I feel like she taught me a lot of, as many of us can say who grew up with her, like she taught me a lot of skills, and one of them was her way that she listened. And there was a time where I wanted to be a journalist too. So like Barbara Walters, I used to like sit and model watch Barbara Walters and like sit like her, or Meredith, I mentioned. So these were women who were journalists who listened for a living. So there were all these three like different kind of elements that I was, the emotional part from my childhood, and then the spiritual aspect, and then the practical element of like these people I admired.
And it's something that's inspiring too, because, at the workplace, I think we think, okay, you're listening to things happen, but when we kind of connect it with your previous answer around that like politeness, there is something to be said around not just, listening to your coworker, but really hearing them, and they feel like there's a more of a collegiality, a connectedness, a sort of good vibe that goes on in the workplace that comes from sort of being a good listener, and it makes you feel like you're not just at work. Like you might, have like an element of a home feel, or you might have a comfortability or something that connects you to a different, like you said, maybe a different frequency or a different channel. And that can be very powerful and I know a lot of workplaces are always working on team building. And one of the things they talk about is active listening skills. And it's easier said than done to be a good listener, especially given, like with the, phones and cell phones these days. I find myself even just drawn away from a human being and into technology, for example. So,
Yeah.
And I think there's so much of work that encourages us to be like transactional and like efficient, right? And that doesn't always lend itself to like actually listening or kind of hearing people as well, and like engaging on that kind of really like personal level.
I totally agree.
Yeah, even with students, right? Like we have so many of them and it's so busy and there's so many things going on. It's so easy to kind of like move through it like you're kind of just checking boxes and kind of just trying to meet the needs of everyone, that it's hard to like then listen in like a very specific moment. But I think obviously it's so important.
Yeah, I think people, you're reflecting back to me, like when we listen well, people feel heard and they feel more connected. And the name of this podcast, right?
Hey.
Connections. Like because there is so much divide and there is so much technology drawing us away from true, real, authentic connection where we look at someone human to human. I think, like if there's any way in those small moments where we can help people feel more connected to each other through really listening, like that's sometimes like the best part of someone's day. And you might not even know, like I know for myself too, if I'm having like a bad day, I feel off and someone's like just paying like a little bit of extra attention, like even like the other day, Wednesday, actually, I was driving to work and my tire blew on my car, like blew right off. And I like not off, but like it went to 0 tire pressure, like in 1 second. So luckily I like was right next to a Green and Raw. So I just like smoothly pulled in and they fixed it for me, so it was like very mild in terms of like a car issue, but it took a long time. They had to order the tire, whatever. So first I like sent an email to everyone on that English attendance list being like, okay, I had to cancel my 12:30 class. Like, can you put a sign on the door? My tire blew, whatever. And then like 3 hours later, okay, I'm going to need to cancel my 4:15 class due to the earlier car trouble. And then it was just so nice. Like just Anthony, just at the front desk, right? Just one sentence, we'll take care of it for you. Like I felt taken care of, like his language. Right. And then even later on, like Michelle, our acting associate dean, emailed me like at like 4:30. Sounds like you haven't had a great day. Like, I hope your evening is better. I'm like, oh, she didn't just like see that and move on. She was like, heard what I wrote and was like, had empathy as part of it too, right? And with empathizing, like Leanne's been in the car mechanic all day and like had to cancel 2 classes. Like that's a disruption. Like I hope you have a good evening. Like it goes a long way. These little moments of listening, empathizing, responding, it made a difference. That like made me smile. I was like, oh, okay, she cares, it was nice.
And we know that you're kind of interested in awareness and mindfulness and kind of mindful awareness, especially as a tool to help yourself and your students be a bit more present in class. And we have research from kind of Harvard and MIT that shows that mindfulness can improve student performance, especially kind of by helping them reduce kind of stress and that kind of stuff. We're wondering what mindfulness kind of means to you and how you define being mindful.
To me, it's first and foremost about pausing. It's like giving yourself space to pause and be still. And you said the word, Mike, so that you can then practice some awareness. So for me, it's really comes down to like yoga and meditation to set the tone. I try to practice every day. and in the morning if possible. And then try to lock into sort of like a different part of myself, my mind, like not like to sit in the observer witness seat. So instead of being in logic mind or emotion mind, trying to lock into something new I learned in therapy recently, to lock into wise mind, which is part of dialectical behavior therapy, which is this idea. Wise mind is kind of like intuition. It's beyond logic and emotion, also like a blending of the two, but it's located, for me, it's like located in my gut. It's different for everyone, but if I'm able to pause and be still and lock into wise mind, then I can kind of hear what the chatter is up here and separate from it. So when the mind is telling me, oh, like, you know, I have a very loud inner critic that I'm working to separate from. And we all, I don't want to speak for everyone, most of us have some level of inner critic. Mine is quite powerful. So, you know, I'm working on separating because I am not my inner critic. So when I lock into wise mind and I can then hear like, oh, that I wish you'd said this. I wish you'd done it better. And then I can say, or you should have. It always says should. You should have. You should do this. You should have done that.
Right.
I did it wrong. And then so wise mind is like, it's okay. It's okay. I'm good enough. You know what I mean? Or it was okay. So that kind of, how has it helped me? It's like kind of everything, because if you don't know what's going on up here, you don't know how you're being influenced in maybe a way that's like not that healthy, you know? So it's kind of everything to be able to hear what is going on, both the more positive thoughts and the ones that are limiting me, in order for me to kind of live my best life and to constantly evolve. And I just like, if I can also hear the intuition, then I'm going to be more likely to follow an authentic path, which is like how I ended up teaching, you know, because like I could hear, okay, like I could feel here, like I'm not happy practicing law. I'm not happy, you know, whatever I was doing, like right before I came to Humber, I was a cross-border wealth strategist. Like, what am I doing over there? But, you know, if I'm not tuned into myself by being mindful and aware, then I'm, you know, I know lots of people 30 years later, and it's like, oh, I guess my whole life. So it's kind of fundamental to like knowing what to do and how to be healthy. When I switched gears from cross-border financial planning into teaching, I did not have any money. I had like I wasn't I had paid back my debt, you know, to law school. Right. Maybe I had like $6,000 saved. I didn't have an apartment. I was living in Montreal. I was coming back to Toronto. I was living at my aunt's house. I had just met my you know, now partner of 8 years, but that was a new relationship. I was like very much in between, but I was also, I needed to listen to the voice in me that I heard from being mindful that was like, you need to have meaning. You cannot do a job that's this inauthentic, you know. And I knew from doing my master's and tutoring at the Writing Center and teaching one class at Humber during my master's, I knew that I really had enjoyed teaching. And I do think we need to spark joy a little bit more. I think we do need to feel more joyful. And if we can feel joyful at work, like, why not? We spend so much time doing that. So yes, there are socioeconomic barriers, absolutely. And I also think if we can cultivate some trust and faith in ourselves, like there's magic in following what your intuition is telling you. Like there is safety on the other side. I believe that anyways. But yeah, it's a challenge for sure.
These days, we have so many technological devices and tools that pull our attention away from the present moment. What is your relationship with technology? How do you stay grounded, mindful, or present in these technologically focused times?
Honestly, I'm like a tiny bit of a Luddite. I like don't I don't engage that much. Like I have an Instagram account and a Facebook account, but I'm like not on there very often. Because I do find it very draining sometimes. I have mixed feelings. Like I think social media is like, there's so much good, there's so much lovely content, and there's so much connection that happens, and there's also all of the negative, hatred and comparing and anxiety. So it's both. For me personally, I feel like when I'm on there, it usually doesn't make me feel better. So I tend not to engage in social media in particular. And I mentioned kind of earlier, like trying to start my day with yoga and meditation. So I have a little practice that I aim to do every day. I'm not perfect at it, but I do it most days where it's called the Miracle Morning. So I practice this, my fiance taught me about it. It's called the Miracle Morning, and it involves an acronym called the SAVERS, which stands for scribing, affirmations, visualization, exercise, reading, and silence. So you do like 5 to 10 minutes of each. And that is like the best way to get grounded. So in an ideal day, I like wake up, I have some water, and I do that practice, and then I open the email, and then I open the technology.
So you're not waking up, rolling over, and grabbing your phone right away in the morning.
I start my day. That? I start my day by doom scrolling on Twitter.
No, you don't. No, you don't. Do you really?
Sometimes, yeah.
Oh my God,
it's terrible.
No, it's you know what? It's so.
I 100%.
I get it.
Yeah.
No, I understand.
Hard. It's addictive because
addictive. Yeah.
I've become. I was somebody who used to read a ton of novels and my reading has gone down since I got my smartphone and since I got my Instagram account or whatever. And I do find myself, rolling over in the morning and checking my phone in the first, 5-10 minutes of the day. And it does scare me, and I'm aware of it. It just pulls you away from life in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And so, I just think now with, even the way we communicate through all these different video platforms, FaceTimes, we're always kind of mediated by technology. And I've noticed, and again, maybe you've noticed in your students, that they are kind of missing that human interaction. Like some of the best times I had at school were, literally hanging out with people, going out, socializing and talking with people in the hallway, at the library. These things were like formative moments in me developing a kind of social life and a social skill that I don't, and I do feel a little bit, and it's sad for kids who maybe have been deprived of that. I mean, we know we went through the pandemic and all that. So there's just so much more technology present is kind of the thing. And I don't know if you've noticed the same thing.
It's funny though, because I think to your point, Mark, Gen Zers, so I think that's anyone born after like 2000, I guess. They're binge watching camcorder footage of high schools in the 90s on YouTube. So they're watching like high school students in the 90s, like with their, big jeans playing hacky sack and like, and they're watching a world where like no one has cell phones. Right. And so on one hand, they're like so close to that world, but on the other hand, they're like so far removed from it because it went from being like kind of no technology to like all the technology so quickly. And I think them binge watching that on YouTube is maybe a sign that there's like a desire for like a less kind of connected world. One of Humber's kind of key outcomes for students is communication skills. This is something that, all students should have when they graduate, and that it's a skill that will serve them well, kind of regardless of what they go on to do. I'm wondering how creative writing, though, helps students in communication skills, and what's the kind of connection between those? I often think of them as separate, but obviously they're connected. I wonder if you've seen how the kind of creative writing process informs more generally communication skills.
Well, I think when we're writing creatively, we're accessing, first of all, a part of us that we all have. We're all inherently creative. Humans are creative beings, but sometimes we get cut off from that, either because we were told we weren't creative, a teacher beat us down, or our parents didn't foster creativity or value it. There's all these ways that we get messages that we're actually not creative, when I think every single one of us is. So first and foremost, when you're practicing creative writing, you're getting in touch with a part of yourself. It's very powerful that maybe you've shunned, maybe has been too quiet, maybe you didn't know was there. So there's can be like an awakening, an empowerment, a re-visioning of oneself, which that empowerment instills confidence, which then can make all your communication feel more empowered, more confident. And the other thing I would say is when you're writing creatively, you're getting in touch with different voices that you might not have known you had, authentic voices, really authentic parts of yourself, that authenticity then flows into your other communications as well. Even if you're not writing creatively, you're in touch with a deeper part of yourself, which just naturally comes out. So that confidence and authenticity part, I think, somehow just gets infused into all your communications, whether they're verbal or written business communications. Like, I think my creative writing skills has made me, also the other thing too is makes you more empathetic. And because reading is a big part of practicing creative writing, is like writing is reading. So when you're reading, it actually makes stories, reading, watching movies too, stories in general. There's been scientific research on this, like helps people feel empathetic. So even just the practice of the craft and the reading, opening up those empathy pathways. Then when you're writing your business email, then when you get a frantic email from a customer who's upset, your empathy pathways are firing and you are better able to respond, to emotionally regulate, which we talked about before, and then respond to that person with empathy. So it's these kind of, I think, like the soft skills that come from creative writing, empowerment, confidence, authenticity, empathy, then kind of flow into other communications.
But it makes so much sense how creativity and creative writing in particular is like actually deeply connected to like all forms of communication. And I think one of the things we hear from students, or just I think people in general, like they're not confident in their communication because I think they often think they have to communicate in certain types of ways, right? Like this is what a good essay looks like, or this is what professional communication looks like. And then that in turn is also kind of like not necessarily authentic, right? And so it becomes stifling. And one of the things I often talk to students about, they'll write something and be like, this isn't very clear. Like, how could we make it a bit clearer? And then they say it to me. I was like, write what you just said. Right? Because it's like
all the time.
Yeah. I'm like, that's, and it's like a light bulb moment. And sometimes it takes a few times to do it, but they begin to realize that their authentic voice is the right voice. And then it gives them that confidence. And I think what you just said there about empathy as well, and going back to all we were talking about with like listening, is that and maybe, when you said that, it kind of made me think how creative writing or the creative process requires you to like tap into and listen to like the other, I guess. Is that what you mean by that? Like you have to kind of channel other perspectives. Is that what?
Oh, yeah. You kind of naturally put yourself in someone else's shoes, especially if you're reading like in the first person also. If you're reading something that's like and it's captivating, you're now hearing in your voice like, okay, my brother has a tattoo on his neck and our landlord is knocking on the door asking for more rent, and our mom and like you're right in there and feeling what that character feels. So that's a huge part of it. And I wish I could remember the details around the science, but Euphemia Fantetti, our colleague, shared this article with me that I was teaching to creative writing students about that actually like our brain, when we hear stories, creates, it might be oxytocin actually. There's something that happens neurologically that helps us actually create the empathy. So there's the practical aspect of like what I just described when you're reading first person, but there's also something that happens neurologically in our brains that is helping us to go into the other person's shoes.
What I really never saw the connection with, and what you started explaining, Leanne, was like reading stories, watching movies, and the human element of communication in that creative process, maybe even of journaling your own feelings, that we often think, especially as writing instructors and communication specialists, we kind of teach students sometimes, that there's this template or there's this way to write something, and we focus so much on form, which is definitely important. We focus on kind of these business type scripts or workplace writing scripts, but the way that sort of this authentic communication comes through is that, we have, and these are words I'm pulling from, Humber as well, is like with communication, it's about being open-minded. It's about being respectful. It's about having nonverbal empathy, to express, inform, and listen. And these are all elements that sometimes I feel like even with our students, we get so caught up on like, well, this is how a paragraph should be structured. This is how an email should be structured. But we're not talking as much and getting into the details of, well, there's this human element. And if you study the human condition, which has been kind of a theme of our conversation today, that you're going to be bringing a very personal but also authentic perspective to your workplace that isn't just this kind of template, robotic way of communicating, and that creativity is part of exploring that or tapping into that. So I thank you for just giving us that perspective into, I never thought now I can go watch movies and feel like I'm learning.
Oh my God. Welcome to my world. Because you were like, what do you do with technology? I'm like, I don't really go on social media, but I love watching movies. Like that is like the light of my life is like movies, and just I do think I'm studying writing. Well, because I practically am like teaching myself screenwriting and writing screenplays. So yes, on that very practical level, I'm watching movies to learn the craft. But I also very much feel like when I'm watching movies, I'm learning about the human condition and increasing my empathy, which makes me a better communicator and teacher. And I'm not just saying that. Like, I really believe that.
Emojis in work emails, overrated or underrated?
Underrated.
Agree.
Yeah, good. Yeah, more joy, more authenticity, less stuffiness. It's good.
Yeah, more emojis.
Yeah, more emojis.
I agree.
Dressing for the job you want, not the job you have. Overrated or underrated?
Underrated. I like the idea of like, because of visualization, like acting now as if you have something. So it's like a manifestation tool. That's why I say underrated.
I agree with that. I think, and not that I'm a big fan of dressing super professionally, but I remember when I started teaching and I was like contract faculty, I just come out of teachers college. It was like a real struggle to get work. And I was talking to someone who was a bit older, and they were asking me what I do. And I think I said something like, I want to be a teacher, or I'm trying to become a teacher, or something like that. And they're like, no, you are a teacher.
Yes. Yes.
And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And it was probably coincidental, but it felt like it kind of all fell in place not long after that. And I don't even remember who this person was, to be honest with you. I just very distinctly remember that moment. Office small talk, overrated or underrated?
Well, it depends what the nature of the small talk is. Like, I'm not into gossip, but I like connection. So I'm like underrated if it's positive small talk.
That's fair.
Bonus for using our podcast name in the answer.
Woo! Yeah. I love bonus marks. Thank you.
Reading self-help books.
Oh, way underrated. They get such a bad rap. Like, they actually help, the good ones, Yeah.
What would if you had one recommendation?
Oh my God. One recommendation?
Yeah. Sorry.
I guess I would say A New Earth.
New Earth.
Eckhart
Oh
Tolle.
yeah.
But that's really tough.
Virtual backgrounds in online meetings, overrated or underrated?
I don't have like strong feelings about this, but out of like the I'm torn because like they're kind of fun sometimes, and I'm all for like more fun and creativity, but also they make that weird halo thing, and you're like, I feel like you're hiding your authentic background. So I would go for underrated, but I'm not like judging if anyone uses them. I get it.
Yeah. Responding to emails immediately. Overrated.
Okay, so I do tend to respond quickly because I was trained that way. I worked for a lawyer who would respond to people right away when I was like still in law school, and so that really like shaped my email response times. But I've grown to think that it's a bit underrated because I think there's something to be said for pausing before you respond, to be more mindful about your response. And I think there's something to be said for not letting yourself get interrupted if you're in the flow of something. So I'm now on the underrated category. Like, I think respond in a timely fashion, but like the right away thing, I don't think we need to be doing that.
That's fair.
Yeah.